Thank you. We will now move on to the third motion, which is help the police work with the prevent duty and contest. And as just remind you again to keep the debate within the remit of the motion and be respectful at all times. Would the proposers like to make a 1-minute speech for the motion?
Currently, Britain and the wider world is facing a crisis. That is a crisis of radicalisation and extremism and terrorism. I won't go into the numerous incidents, but I'm sure you can think of many. The SU currently has 2 policies, which in effect advocate obstructing the work of the police by not working with the government, unless legally obliged to, may I add, the government's programme to deal with radicalisation called Contest. Now, these policies were made many years ago, so perhaps it was a different time, and perhaps that's some justification, but that's no justification for why we should keep them. This motion will repeal these policies and implement a system to deal with radicalisation in the SU, which these older policies did not implement, only removed. Thank you.
Anyone speaking against the motion? Yep.
Prevent has received widespread criticism, even from the UN, for failing to be an effective counter-terrorism strategy and for fostering a culture of fear and discrimination. Universities like Warwick are apparently at high risk of radicalisation because of them representing a place where, and I quote from the founder of Prevent itself, very young, idealistic students are engaging with new concepts and new ideas. Not only does this represent a rather patronising and highly bigoted judgment of students in higher education and their capabilities to engage with new ideas without suddenly becoming terrorists, but also demonstrates the clear reality of the strategy as being to discriminate, suppress and spy. At Warwick, we treat students as students and not as suspects. The promotion and support of Prevent and Contest have no place in a progressive education system. Say no to spying on our students, say no to racism, say no to Islamophobia, and please vote against this motion.
Well, that was a lot to go through, so I'll just pick one of them. There's claims of Islamophobia with Contest, and I don't quite agree with that. Of the Channel programme, which is a subsidiary programme, 30% of the intake was of the far right. Yes, there is a large focus on Islamic extremism, but that's simply a fact of life. If the Contest was around in the 80s, I'm sure it would be focusing on Irish extremism, but it's not the 80s. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but clearly...
Thank you. Sorry, we have to cut you off.
I don't know what that was meant to be saying because it really wasn't clear. I would like to say this motion, Prevent has been shown it is racist, it is Islamophobic. It's asking us one of the so-called signs of extremism is students becoming withdrawn. That's also a sign of depression. We're not going to start penalising our students for having...
Thank you. We'll have to cut you off.
Yes, this is a point brought up that one of the signs that the government says is people becoming withdrawn could be potentially a signal that they may be vulnerable to radicalisation. But this is not the sole sign. The police aren't standing outside mental health clinics looking for people. This is a sign used in conjunction with other signs, such as perhaps saying things that sound very much like rhetoric, you know.
I guess, again, going to be more like a question people can deal with, but most media coverage from left or right is kind of adjudged Prevent and all these movements to be a failure more than anything. So frankly, in my mind, it's immaterial whether it's racist. I would believe it is, but it's immaterial whether it is or isn't. If it doesn't work, why are you inviting it here? It seems completely illogical unless there's a partisan reason.
So yeah, it was argued before that the motions we currently have in place, or the policy we have in place, is obstructing justice in any way. No, it's not. We are complying with legal requirements, and that is clearly what you need to do in order to fulfill justice. Anything else is just the police doing whatever they want. I don't know how we can openly invite government surveillance into our lecture halls, into our seminar rooms, and tell staff to spy on their students and watch what they are doing and recording their attendance as they currently are. This can simply not be the right way forward.
Yeah, I think it's funny that this motion comes from people that normally talk about free speech and how we should protect free speech in universities when Prevent is a clear obstruction of free speech, and it clearly racializes people and it has a clear target. Prevent has led to people even being deported or being on the threat of deportation for studying Islam and studying things related to Islam. So I don't know what type of thing you want to bring into universities and then seem to talk about free speech as if there are other threats to free speech.
I'm against this motion because I feel that's going to breed institutional racism into our systems, especially in terms of religious, when you look at religion. Because you see, if for example, let me give you an example here. If a Muslim comes and starts speaking, saying something like Allah, Inshallah, or something like that, and the other surveillance, obviously there's going to be an eye out for him because he will be suspected as a suicide bomber. You may think I'm being too extreme, but I think the idea of institutional racism still has a point, and we shouldn't allow that in the school.
A lot of points to get through. There was a point of spying on students, and the police have constantly compared this to teachers and professors looking out for grooming or sexual abuse. And they've compared it to looking out for drug abuse or looking out for gang affiliation. And if, by all means, if you say that prevent or contest is spying on students, then you must also say that that is spying on students looking out for sexual abuse.
I'd like to say here, aside from the fact that prevent is massively flawed, racist, etc., as we have said, I'm not ever going to sit here and endorse the university, the SU, working closely with the police, who are known to be historically racist institution, and I'm not going to let our most vulnerable students be pried on by them.
There have been cases nationwide where students and professors have actually been prevented from pursuing intellectual curiosity because of prevent, where students and lecturers have been arrested in connection to dissertations which study Islamophobia and other related subjects. I don't think we as an educational institution can stand behind policies such as prevent, which actively prevent intellectual curiosity.
I'd just like to quickly respond to an assertion you made in your kind of opening speech where you said that this policy about prevent, that we don't work with it, was introduced and then has been left to sit. As somebody who sits on an SU exec, that's totally incorrect. We look over our policies every time there's an ASM. Like, this has been reviewed thoroughly every single time it's come around to ASM at this proposed time. So, yeah, you're just wrong on that, sorry.
Yeah, I think it's quite worrying that we're weaponizing sexual assault to pass this policy, because obviously, as you said, the biggest focus of prevent is in sexual assault, and that's clearly not where the efforts are carried. And if the government was truly interested in protecting victims of sexual assault, then they would probably not cut all the cuts they've been doing to domestic violence services and pastoral services to help victims of sexual assault. So this has nothing to do with sexual assault. Please stop weaponizing this on your speech.
In addition to what Helena has just said, it's clear that racism and institutional racism are so pervasive in our society that you would even begin to compare those two things. One is looking out for people's welfare, and the other is to the detriment of it.
Well, I was going to comment on the freedom of speech point, but I feel very much that the room has focused on my comparison. Whereas, in fact, it was not my comparison, it's the police's comparison. This is what the police compare it to. I'm not weaponizing it. That's simply comparing the systems by which it's used. And also you suggest that looking out for people that may be radicalized is not looking out for their welfare. How is that not looking out for their welfare?
I think a lot of this hinges on whether you believe the police and the wider UK government is institutionally racist. I think there's clearly historical precedent to say that they were maybe 20, 30 years ago, especially when I forget what it was called, the report on the death of Stephen Lawrence came out. Can we say that about the police today? I'm not so sure. And I say that as an ethnic minority. I don't think the police are institutionally racist. There might be small individual cases, but to use the label institutionally racist, that says they're rotten to the core.
I think by saying that, it's not your example, it's police's example, exactly shows why we shouldn't be working with the police. And to say that the police isn't still an institutionally racist institution is just not true. There are people in the police who are ex-police. There was a great interview by somebody recently who used to work for the police commission on gang crime and knife stabbings in London, who publicly said...
I mean, Alex kind of summarised what I said in a very nice way. But you can't say that the police isn't institutionally racist because it's literally a fact.
So first of all, quoting someone for your argument and then saying you're not making that argument is not an argument. And then Literally, oh no, okay. Tomorrow there's an event by academics at this university who have been impacted in their research by Prevent and cannot talk about Palestinian rights. This event is ticketed because of Prevent. There's so many barriers being thrown in the way of academics because of this. This is a point we need to look at, and a policy that encourages racial profiling is clearly institutionally racist.
Well, it seems like most of the room has taken specific issues with Islamophobia, problems with freedom of speech, and they say that the Contest has these things, which I disagree, and I'm willing to talk about these things, but fundamentally Contest tries to de-radicalize vulnerable persons. And the SU is trying the SU has these policies which try as far as they can to be as obstructionist as possible to these efforts. And I think that's a wrong position to hold in this day and age.
According to the strategy, a desire for political and moral change and relevant mental health issues constitute indicators of extremism. Conflating these characteristics with extremism seriously undermines our civil liberties and justifies a Big Brother silencing state. Prevent has consigned more and more actions, thoughts and beliefs to their ambiguous and highly problematic definition of extremism, legitimised racist and Islamophobic profiling, and has been used to outlaw and suppress dissent against the government's domestic and foreign policy decisions. Supporting Prevent was essentially mandate the SU to work with an authoritative body that discriminates against our members, and that's what we are here for. Please vote against.
We'll now go to indicative vote. So all those in favour of the motion? All those against the motion? And any abstains?